Welcome back. A judge has ruled that a former school turned shelter on Staten Island should not be used to house migrants.
So the move comes after weeks of protests from people who live around there and some of the community leaders citing safety concerns. Well, now the city is moving to appeal the judge's decision. At the same time, in a separate case, the city's suing to suspend the right to shelter. Joining us right now, Yesenia Mata, the executive director of Colmena. It's a nonprofit immigrant rights organization on Staten Island. Nice to have you here, Yesenia.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so tell me what your organization does and in relation to this shelter right now.
Well, La Colmena is an immigrant rights center. We focus primarily on empowering the immigrant worker through education, culture, and organizing, and economic development. When we say economic development, it means workforce development. What we do is empower them to join the construction industry, the childcare industry, and the cleaning industry, and gardening industry. I want to say that we're there as an organization to ensure that when the immigrant worker comes to Staten Island, that they feel empowered, that they know they have a shot to the American dream, and more than anything, so they could continue providing for their families and contributing to the city.
So we just had Congressman Nicole Malliotakis, who's been very outspoken about not being a migrant shelter. The people in the community say they smell raw sewage. They smell raw sewage. They hear the generators going all night. It's affecting their quality of life. Have you been to this shelter at all?
Look, so I understand people will always have differences of opinions, right? We understand that. We understand that people have a right to protest. People have a right to voice what they're feeling. What we're not in agreement with, though, is the way that a particular group, and let me be very careful with that, a particular group that doesn't represent the entire Staten Island, this particular group that has been rallied by our very own Congresswoman, right, Nicole Malliotakis, has been rallied to create violence and chaos. And because of that, because of the hate that the particular migrants are receiving, not only that, but also our organization, because we support them.
But let me ask you something. Have you been to that particular shelter to see what the people in that community are experiencing right now?
Yes, what we're doing is that we are working with shelters across the city. In particular with this one, we've been told to be very careful getting near that shelter because of the hate that our organization has been receiving.
So you haven't seen it yourself? You haven't experienced it yourself?
We've been working very closely with all the migrants in the shelter, and they come to our center every day to let us know what is happening. They tell us how they're being threatened. They show us videos of people saying, if you come out, we're going to kill you. If you come out, just watch. If you come out, you're going to be done. And I think it's with that. It's like people are trying to undermine this and say, oh, they're just shouting and screaming. No. This is violence. This is chaos that's happening in Staten Island. Like, even ourselves as a center, we are receiving threats every day saying that, just watch, we're going to come and find you, we're going to come and lecture you, be careful out there. Like, it's a bittersweet moment for us, because we say we're happy that finally the world is seeing this, but it's so upsetting how people are not seeing it. And that's where we are at the moment. And we're going to continue pushing back. We're going to continue fighting.
We just talked to Congresswoman Malliotakis. We'll play a bit of her soundbite and just get you to respond to that real fast.
The immigrant communities are the ones who are most upset. Why? Because they sacrificed greatly. They followed the rules. They waited their turn. They did everything right. And now they see a group of people coming into the community taking taxpayer resources away. This was a school that was supposed to have 1,000 seats to our overcrowded system, and it's been taken away from the community. Our national parks now are being taken away from our community. I had an assisted living facility where I was joined by a 95-year-old veteran this week, who he and seniors were removed from that facility, and then the organization Homes for the Homeless that ran it turned around and cut a deal with the mayor to turn it into a migrant shelter. That is wrong when we see taxpayers being treated like this.
What's your response to her?
It's just the hypocrisy that I'm hearing from our very own Congresswoman, because every time that, even prior to this, every time that we have been pushing for a pathway to citizenship to the same immigrant community that she's voicing her opinion on, right? She keeps pushing back, canceling any efforts in Washington, D.C. So I just hear that hypocrisy. And on top of that, I'm just hearing her pin communities against one another.
I mean, she's also elected by the people that she represents, and she's getting feedback from the people in her community that are saying they don't want this. So she has to do her job in terms of representing the people's will.
Well, that's only one narrative that people are hearing on Staten Island. Well, there's another narrative. There's people like the organization like La Colmena or groups in the community that you also see them for the immigrant community. Again, prior to even all of this happening, we have been pushing for a pathway to citizenship. We have been pushing at least for work permits, and she has canceled every opportunity for us to even get there. And even at that, instead of working in Washington to pushing for the federal government to support the city of New York, she's too busy riling people up in these protests and trying to do a succession so we could not be part of New York City. I think it's like, it's just, for us, we're here as a center. Work with us, we just stop this violence. Do your job.
So let me ask you something. It's a complicated situation, you know that. So on one hand, the city is saying, we want to put migrants in this shelter on Staten Island. They lose it in court yesterday. They're appealing it under the right to shelter. And in Manhattan, they're trying to get rid of right to shelter. It makes no sense.
Yes, and one of the things is that there's a legal process.
Why should Staten Island have right to shelter and Manhattan not have right to shelter? It makes no sense.
And one of the things is, I really want to make that very clear, right? We only have 2% of the asylum seekers on Staten Island, right? 2%. It's that is a very small percentage. But you do hear that noise coming out from this particular group because they are very loud, very racist. They want to make sure that people are seeing them. So again,
by the way, it's happening in Queens as well. By Creedmoor, plenty of protests going on.
But is it getting to the point where people are being threatened, saying, if you come out, we're going to kill you. If you come out, just watch.
No, I think everyone agrees across the board that should not happen, that violence. However, if the people that live in that community don't want that there, who are also paying tax money to support this, I mean, you have to understand where they're coming from as well, correct?
But even further, though, had it not been for our very own police officers in uniform, these people would have been attacked. And we saw it when they were trying to push the bus back and forth. We saw that. Yeah. We saw when one of the police officers also got injured, right? So it's again, that is a violence that is coming particularly from this group. It's nothing new. People, us as Staten Islanders, we know who this group is, right? Yeah. We know that there's a particular group that is very xenophobic and racist, and finally the world is seeing it, and that's why I'm here to really show, this is what's happening, and we will continue voicing our opinions on this because it just needs to stop.
So Yesenia, if people want to support you, how can they find you?
Well, people can find us on social media. We're very active on social media. Find us on Twitter. You will see our latest videos, and most importantly, what we are an organization that, again, we're here to just support immigrant workers to make sure.
You're doing the workforce training, the ESL classes a lot, but where can the people go to? Because I know you have a standalone location, a center, right?
Yes, we have 2 locations. We have one in the Port Richmond and Stapleton area, and people can just find us on social media.
La Colmena, NYC.
La Colmena, NYC, correct.
Very nice. Thank you, Yesenia. Appreciate you coming on and talking with us this morning.